Alrighty, we are back for another episode of AI Tool Report Live. Today's guest is Sooz Young. We actually met in the same co-working space in Glasgow. We definitely did not have enough time to actually get to know one another because there's so many areas of our lives that actually cross over, and we only learned this in the week that I was leaving the co-working space to go elsewhere, which is an absolute travesty, but we're going to jump into those different points today. Sooz, from what I understand, you're the director of technology coaching. You empower people with the essential skills of a digital mindset, which is more important and pertinent than ever. You deliver CPD accredited courses, and you work in AI, automation, cybersecurity, and you have maybe the cutest dog on the entire planet.
I think that's what originally got us talking to each other, because I think you spoke to Disco more than you spoke to me
Likely.
to start
It
off
sounds
with.
like me, yeah.
But I think that's most of the case, because I do have like the cutest dog ever. So it doesn't surprise me at all in any way. But I'm glad that he got us to be able to chat to each other, because once we did open those conversation lines, it just, as you said, there was a lot for us to discuss that was in alignment with each other. So it's nice to pick this back up again now that you're over the other side of the world.
100%. And I think, I mean, three things that immediately come to mind is travel, which I want to jump into your experience in Japan and what that was like, but also education and AI and automation as well, right? I think that's the three areas that we cross over in the
Okay.
most. So take me back to that time, for example. I was looking at your LinkedIn history and I'm gutted we didn't manage to have a conversation about this, but you spent some time in Japan teaching. Tell me about that. What was that experience like?
I did. So I think I'll go a step before that. And the reason why I went to Japan, because I studied applied music at university. So that meant I specialised in all things to do with the music industry. So if you think recording and sound production, music and film, music animation, video production, video animation, recording and sound marketing, all that fun jazz stuff, right? All that good stuff about using computers effectively to create be creative with your technology, because we were all using Macs at that time, and I absolutely loved it. I was obsessed. And after university, of course, what I wanted to do was set up a recording studio, right? Because that's what you think when you're like 20 years old and you go and get a degree in music, and that's what you want to do. But that didn't happen, and I went and I got a job and then got made redundant, because again, it was still just as hard back then as it is nowadays moving into the workplace and getting a job after university. So I was like, screw this. And I just decided to look up on Google working in Japan. And I'd done quite a lot of experience whilst at university doing mentorship through what was called the Summer Academy at Strathclyde, which was part of Strathclyde University, which is where I studied. And I worked with young people through that time. And it was just gamified learning experiences that we did to be able to help them improve. When they would go back into school, they would come to the summer school, and it was just a lot of fun. And we would take kids. We had kids from Spain, we had kids from England, we had kids from Scotland that would come to the summer school, and we would just do fun things with them for 2 weeks, and then they would go back. So yeah, as I said, I looked on Google, working in Japan. First thing that came up, apply for a job in Japan, teaching English. I went, great, went online and filled that form out. They called me the next morning, and I got a phone call to ask me to come through to Edinburgh. Now, being in Glasgow, that's the other side of the country, to an interview. And so I went for an interview. It was like a group interview, and then you had like a one-on-one interview, and you had a written test to do. And then they called me 2 weeks after that and told me that I had a job in Japan for a year. And I was like, amazing. And so in 3 months' time, I was going to Japan to teach English out there. And I was only staying for a year, and I ended up staying for 4 years. And during that time, I just really found how to work effectively. I learned my work ethic. I was so obsessed with everything Japanese culture. I kind of had that Turning Japanese, if you know that song. No, Turning Japanese, it's like an 80s song or something. And I really felt like that when I was out there. But because I was so engrossed with the culture and the way that they worked and the way that they respect and the way that they utilized technology in a way as well, like they were already way technologically advanced. There's things that we do now that they've had for like 20 odd years in that way. And that was always what was fascinating for me as well. So I taught English out there, and again, working from young people all the way up to kind of 80-year-olds teaching English. Again, these kind of gamified learning experiences as part of that. And it was fascinating. And I loved it, every single part of it. And I came back here and I got a job at Apple, and I became a trainer at Apple for 4 years after that. So I was then able to use not just my university experience of what I was teaching at university, recording and sound, music production, video production, creating films, like we're helping people utilize their technology better, but also use my educational experience as well. So at that time, I was working with individuals and businesses as well as the staff and helping to support them better utilize their technology better. So I've worked with thousands upon thousands of individuals, either on a one-to-one or a group basis, to help them get the most, both technically and creatively, out of their technology using fun learning experiences as part of that, right? It's all about enjoying this tool that we have in front of us, which it is. All technology is a tool to enhance our lives in that sort of way. And that's really how we should approach it and that's what I think as we move into our AI chat, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So then
Interesting.
after,
I
what
want
did
to I
that
want to
do?
stop on that if I
I know I
can.
told you I can ramble, right?
You
I can go
can, you
on
can
it.
definitely ramble. So the two things that I'm most curious about there is you've got this Japanese society and culture, you've got this society and culture in the UK, specifically Scotland. What were the biggest differences that you noticed both in the teaching and education style, and secondly the learning style as well, the way people consume education, the way people learn?
So it's vastly different. And because in the way that they learn in Japan is like, even just from a language perspective, right? They have three language systems. They've got hiragana, katakana, and they've got kanji. Kanji are the Chinese characters, hiragana are the Japanese characters, and katakana are the English words translated into Japanese but written through. I know it's complicated. So this is what people are like, oh God, how do I understand AI or coding? You're like, there's countries doing this already with just how they communicate with their language systems. So they have three language systems based off of the 46, 47 vowel sounds that they have, which are A-E-I-O-U, but they're pronounced differently over there. So they learn differently, right? They've got to learn these symbols. They read differently. They read back to front. When we read front to back, it's their back to front is the opposite way of ours as well. So they start at the back of a book and read the other way. They read, yeah, I can't do it visually here, but they
Right to
start at the back
left.
page, right to left to right. So they
Yeah.
read the opposite way than we do over here. And so when they're learning, they have to use the visual representation because, like their language system, those three language systems have a different character that's associated to that, a sound that's associated to that as well. Now, when we think about English, we have 26 letters in the alphabet. Those letters, those symbols are put together in some sort of format, and those format is then what's translated into a word. And then when you think about the English language, though, and then also being as a Scottish person or a Glaswegian, and we have words that we use which are different than other people as well. And that's what Japanese people find challenging when they come to learn English, is because they can read and write very well, but they can't speak it as well, which is why they have what are called conversation schools or ikaiwas, which is what they're called out there. And that's what I worked at, a conversation school where I helped people to communicate effectively through the language that they were learning. So they were learning writing and reading as well as the conversation. An example, if I was to say to you to catch up can have multiple explanations of what that means. So to catch up means that we can meet at a time and converse about things that have happened in our past, right? If I say, let's have a catch up, if you think of the word catch and you think of the word up, you would think that's to maybe grab something and then put it up into the air. So there's lots of these phrases that you would then have to teach as a language, which is different than the structure of maybe how a sentence is put together in the Japanese language. So it's interesting, right? It's really fascinating, this sort type of stuff. And that's what I loved about being able to teach and teach about conversation and teach about communication in that sort of way, because it was different and there's differences in that.
Was there anything that was superior about the British or the Scottish education system and vice versa as well? Is there anything that you've taken from the Japanese system you're like, this is the way we do things? Because I can imagine your teaching style is probably some amalgamation of both systems, essentially.
Well, I didn't teach in the Japanese school system because it was a conversation school. But what I do teach are gamified experiences. So things that are fun, things that are using all different types of senses and all different types of ways and ability to learn, or sight or sound, all of our approaches to learning, because we all are individual and it's all how we learn. I had to learn how to understand, to read somebody by if they understood something without them telling me that or not. So I could look at a person and go, yeah, they don't understand what I'm saying.
Mm.
So because we didn't speak the same language. But what's massively different around, just from a cultural point of view, is how frequently they learn in Japan. Generally, everybody has the same holidays over there. So they'll have Golden Week, which is a week in May. They'll have Obon, which is a week in August, and they'll have New Year because that's their annual celebration, and that's 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks off at New Year. Everybody has the same holidays. Schools don't have summer off; they might have 2 weeks off in summer. And
Wow.
as they move from kindergarten to elementary to middle school to then high school, they are generally in education from 6 a.m. in the morning all the way through up until 10 or 11 at night, whether that is, I know,
Jesus.
I know, totally different than our kind of like 9 to 3 that they get here. And it means that they are not only doing stuff that's, I'm on a podcast, sorry. They're just dropping something off at my door. Sorry, I knew the dog would start barking there as well. Here, come here, pal. This is all live as well, isn't it? Sorry, Liam.
It is
Um,
indeed. It's all good.
It's all good. It's all good. So, yes, they are in school like all day. If they're not in school, they're studying. If they're not studying, then they're doing something homework wise to be able to learn. So, you have a culture that is based on learning and have this ethic of wanting to develop and wanting to improve. And it's just built into the culture. So, that's where you then see that into work ethic and how people
Mm.
move into the workforce, and then how do they actually do their job, the things that they do. There's a real culture of respect out there. And when if I compare that to here, we don't have that. We don't have that same culture of respect. Like in Japan, I was Suzu sensei, right? So I was a teacher. I was seen as, oh wow, you're a teacher. That's amazing. When in the UK, you're a teacher means that you're a washout. You failed because you can't do, right? You teach. And that comes
Yeah.
from American media, it comes from what's presented in the media, and not actually what's real life, how actually everybody needs to learn. Everybody, the only way that they can grow or develop or function or establish themselves as an expert is by learning and development. So when you then have people in the workforce in the UK that they're given learning opportunities, they don't take advantage of it. They don't take
Mm.
this as an opportunity to evolve and to grow. You get people that are stagnant in their behaviors. You don't see people developing themselves. They want to get things for free. They want to get things done for them, when actually, if you're taught that learning is a great thing and that we all do it on a day by day basis, that the thing that we can't live without, which I'm waving my phone about, is all about learning in some sort of way. So it's just changing as a mindset, I think, that is different, which is taught from such a young age, based around respect and development, and that we don't really seem to have that over here in that kind of Western culture. I'm not
Do you know
sure if you
what?
can relate to that, but yeah.
Well, it would be difficult for me to speak too much on it because I've not done years of education. But my mum, for example, or was a head teacher for primary school
Okay.
for 20, 25 years in East Kilbride. And I was on the phone to her a couple of weeks ago, and she was basically telling me about the decline in the respect, attention span, and so on of children, especially over the past like 10 years specifically. It's got worse and worse and worse. And I imagine you've probably got a lot to speak on this as well. But similarly to my mum as well, she can speak on this for 45 minutes, and I know that you probably can too. So I'm gonna move the conversation along. Where we left off the last point, you were talking about how you'd moved into Apple as a trainer and an educator.
That's right.
And what I'm wondering is, at what point did you move from that space of being an educator, a teacher, a trainer, and more into that entrepreneurial space? Was that something that was always on the docket? You always wanted to do that? Was that just a natural progression? How exactly did that switch happen, and why did it happen?
It happens because of years of corporate. It's just generally the case. So I absolutely loved working at Apple and I loved the environment that I was in. However, you are a tiny part of a huge conglomerate, which is a corporate, and that's really um, what anybody will say within a corporate environment. I also wasn't working effective hours. So you were working all the hours, all the days of the week. You wouldn't have 2 days off next to each other. So it became quite laborsome on your physical and mental well-being in that way too. So I needed to then find another opportunity, find another role that gave me more consistent hours and more consistent environment to be able to work in. So I moved from Apple to legal corporate as a technology trainer for one of the silver circles. Silver circle are like, there's the magic circle, which is the top law firms in the world, and then the silver circle are the ones just underneath that. So I worked for one of them. They had 26 offices in 16 countries, and my role there was to help develop training and also look after the learning management system for people that were coming on any of the technology courses across all of those offices. So whenever they had a big rollout of training and IT infrastructure, there had to be training as part of that. And it was my role to make sure that that compliance training was effectively marked in their accreditation, because this leads into why CPD accreditation is super important, because lawyers, doctors, anybody within an accredited role has to get certain amount of CPD hours every year in order
Expand on that
to.
for me a second. What is CPD exactly? Explain that for
So
me and the audience.
yeah, of course, CPD is continual professional development. So it is a requirement of some of these generally high end roles of like accountants, engineers, doctors, lawyers, that they have to do a certain amount of CPD accredited training every year in order to keep their license. So they may,
Got
if
you.
they're longer, if you're a lawyer that's been doing it for 10 years, you may need to get between 16 to 20 hours of CPD accreditation every year. And they can choose what that accreditation is. However, it has to be marked effectively in an LMS, which is a learning management system, so that then that is tracked via through to their accreditation service, so that when people buy that service, or if a company has these people on their books, they say that these people are compliant. They are keeping themselves up to date and up to knowledge in the new things that are happening, not only in their industry, but also that will enhance their role, which is why courses like the ones that I've got and courses that you guys are developing as well are going to be super important for these, especially around the AI and automation, cybersecurity, all of these things that are protecting people as we move into this new industrial revolution, this AI revolution, which we're already on that path at the moment. So keeping ahead of the curve is to get yourself CPD accredited as part of it. It means that you are making yourself up to be better on your CV, on your resume, to make sure that you are ahead of the curve because you have an accreditation that's CPD accredited for your business or your
Interesting.
individual.
So, from what I can see, you've been running your current venture for around 7 years, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, with this is kind of pre AI to what is kind of we're commonly using AI. I'm not sure if you'd maybe heard of it at that point, but I'd certainly not heard much about it apart from iRobot with Will Smith. So let's move back to that time, right? So you get kind of sick of this corporate environment. You're never having 2 days in a row.
That's
At
right.
some point, you decide to make that switch and kind of start up this own venture on your own. So, what I want to hear about the genesis of that, and two, I would love some explanation behind your CTA as well. So I've seen that on your CTA at the end of your LinkedIn bio, why choose us? And you put proven track record with 4,000 people upskilled, practical no nonsense training, which I love, commitment to long term success and support, and then ready to take the next step. Let's unlock your team potential and drive your business forward. So let's hear
Yeah.
about the genesis, and I'd love to hear about how you came to those specific things as your CTA.
Yeah. Awesome. So in legal corporate, I was able to have a 9 to 5. And so I was able to have time back and some money to spend. And I knew that long term goal, I wanted to get out of the corporate sphere. And I had so many people coming to me on the side for help and support continuously from what I was doing at Apple previously. And just because they knew that they needed help. Now I'm talking 10 years ago, right? 2015. Not everybody had a smartphone 10 years ago still. People were still just getting introduced into smartphones. the Apple Watch had just come out, wearables technology at that time. So there were still people that needed that hands-on support. So they were coming to me at the side. And I was like, why am I still in corporate? Why am I still doing this? Like, I've got tons of people asking me for help. There's a total market here for me. So whilst I was doing 2 years of legal corporate, I studied. I learned. I went on courses to not just learn how to run a business, learn about further digital skills, learn about marketing further. I utilized the income that I had, and I worked out my finances at that time as well to make sure that I could run a business, that I couldn't just start a business without understanding that I needed money and clients come in to be able to do that. So I spent 2 years doing that. And then I just took the big bite because I got great opportunity. And I think that comes from the people that I've worked with. So the fact that I'd worked at Apple for 4 years as a trainer for them, I'd been teaching in Japan before that. I was working in legal corporate. I got a big client as soon as I set up technology coaching. It was really allowed me to be able to set up technology coaching because I got a big client right off the bat. And then from there, I got Google Digital Garage. So I was then delivering training through in Edinburgh for Google Digital Garage, which again was another big client. I could tick that off as one of the big guys that I'd got. And then from there, again, posting on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the B2B, as they say, because it totally is. Posting on LinkedIn what I was doing, and then somebody from Facebook saw that that's what I was doing, and they were looking for a training provider in Scotland to deliver their digital skills training program.
Mm.
And I got asked to meet with their partnering company to do that, to then deliver training to 3,000 people, to give them a Facebook digital certification, and I did that in 2019. So by the end of 2019, I had worked with Google Digital Garage, and I was partnering with Facebook at that time. We were just finishing off that project and starting up their next project. Um, and this project was going to be in 7 countries across Europe, and I was going to be designing the training, the next level of business training that would go out to small businesses at that time from there. And then COVID hit, right? So COVID hit and kind of took a lot of those opportunities away, which most people can explain. And at that time, I'd built my team up to 10 people, and we had our office in the city centre. And so COVID took a big toll out of the training environment, as you can understand from there. But when I lead into what the CTA is on the LinkedIn profile, that's the credibility that we have. We've partnered with the biggest companies in the tech space to be able to provide training to not just their people, but also to other people as well. And that just comes from experience and skill stacking as I talk about it. So it's only my skills and experience that I've done in different areas that have stacked up in these different categories to be able to get to that point of
Speak
where
to
it
me
was.
about that shift, and perhaps this might lead into your kind of adoption and learning and delivery of AI education as well. But it sounds as if kind of pre 2020, pre COVID, you've got a lot of these big clients and you're doing specific client work for Facebook, for Google, for these other organizations. COVID hits, you had an office of 10 people. That obviously changes your business structure. And from what it sounds like now, and I could be wrong, correct me if I am wrong, but you now have something that's more of like an internal training program that you deliver. It's a specific education system on
That's
AI,
right.
automation, and other things. So, one, how did you first learn about AI? And two, what does your kind of core offering look like now? How do you deliver these training courses on these specific subject areas?
Yeah, great, Liam. The concept of a digital mindset is based upon 6 core competencies of innovation, web presence, social media marketing, cybersecurity, AI and automation, and data. So making decisions with data. They all work together, they don't work individually. You can't come up with an idea to then not have it represented online in some sort of way through a web presence. You then need to drive people towards it through marketing and digital marketing strategies, usually through social media marketing. You need to make sure you're protected and your customers are protected through cybersecurity. You need to implement ways of automating that process through AI and implementing the tools to make that work better for you. And then working with the data at all times, which is where the decisions are made from. So they work together to make a complete digital mindset, because we live in both the physical and the digital worlds. There's no separation from them. And we need to use our unique human traits, which is our creativity, our teamwork, our collaboration, our communication, all these essential skills that we have, okay? The key skills that people are looking for in job roles, that technology can sometimes take that away. So the technology that we type using our phones now, we send text messages, but actually having a call with somebody or speaking to somebody, or when they ask you a question, you answer that question back verbally out loud. These are the skills that we need to develop and enhance, and which is what we try to do through building a complete digital mindset. So both the technical and the essential skills through gamified learning experiences. And this came from not just my experience of working with these big companies, but this was part of what the Facebook Digital Skills Program was. They had 6 courses, which were these topics of innovation, web presence, social media marketing, cybersecurity, AI and automation, and making decisions with data. So even though I'd been introduced to using AI whilst I was at Apple, so if you think back, I started at Apple at 2011, which sounds freaking ages ago now, but again, they were using AI tools at that time. That's when Siri started to get announced at that time, where we could talk to our phones. That was freaking mind blowing, right? And I
Mm.
was there. I was there at Apple when Steve Jobs was still alive, and then when Steve Jobs passed away, the company totally changed. It became a really different company to work for after that, and the process and how they helped and support and all these evolutions with the technology kind of changed after within that as well. So I saw how AI was being used and how it was going to be developed through that process of working at Apple and understanding the operating systems and kind of how they were going to work and where they were going to move forward. Which interesting, I don't know if you saw the OpenAI announcement yesterday.
What
Just total
specific one? Because they've
sidebar.
been shipping everything over
Everything
shipments.
out. It's built into iOS now.
Uh,
So with Apple
ChatGPT.
Intelligence, ChatGPT is going to be built into iOS. And I was like, I knew they wouldn't do that. I knew that Apple wouldn't let OpenAI get away with just being the leaders in AI. Apple would have
Not a
to get their,
chance.
not a chance. They would have to make sure it was built in. So that was just my little excitement yesterday of what's going to happen. And I was like, I need to go and get a new phone right now. I need to go and get a new phone. So I've got Apple Intelligence straight off the bat. But yeah, no, as part of the Facebook program that we were doing, we delivered an AI and automation course. And what I've done is I've developed these even further, and I've developed them even more gamified. I've developed them with the most up to date information and showcasing how connected they are with both the
Mm.
essential and the technical sides of their brain. And that only comes through my experience of being a kind of educator and understanding that people need to have their human traits that are our essential skills to work with the technology, these tools that we develop to make them work for us in that sense, if
I
that
want
makes sense.
to touch more on AI in a second, but before we do, I'm very intrigued about your exact delivery mechanism of this training, right? And this might be part of the secret sauce, so divulge what you want to essentially, right? But we're talking about these 6 core competencies to basically succeed in the digital environment.
Yeah.
AI and automation is obviously a very big part of that. You have had a wealth of experience in being able to gamify this. You've worked with thousands and thousands of students. You understand to a very granular degree how people learn, right? And you're really, really exemplifying that gamification and making sure people have fun, enhancing the human elements is part of that. If I'm to come into you and I'm like, Suze, I'm a complete fucking idiot and I need to be educated right now on this, get me up to scratch on a granular level, how do we do that?
I think it's challenging to do it from an individual point of view because I think these need to be taught as experienced. So whether that is experiencing it with other people or you're experiencing it with the technology and how the technology is working its way back with you. So I like to think of what I do as interactive learning experiences. So as you are learning the concepts, you are interacting either with the other humans that are learning it at the same time through um, teamwork, communication, collaboration, problem solving. So you're maybe given a task and you've got to come up with a solution as part of that, using the technology to either help you or work out how you can then use that within the technology. Or if you're doing it self led, then you're doing it through some sort of gamified technology experience. So that could be through some of the tools that are built and that are out there as well, gamified learning, point based systems, lots. I'm not going to diverge too much into that because I can go off on a massive tangent on that. But if you look up gamification in some sort of way, you'll learn what those things are in that way. So, as an individual coming, it would all be always dependent on what their needs are, what their challenges are. But if we're delivering these in person, it is usually in a group format where people will be given a learning outcome. So what it is that they're going to achieve, then that's broken down into sections, and in that section they're then giving a learning point. That learning point is then established through examples. Those examples are then related to them as individuals or within their working environment, and then they're given some tasks and games to play as part of that, using the tools but having to talk about it, having to tell each other what they're doing as part of it, having to discuss and collaborate, because this is what makes us human. We are human, we are social, and when we only use technology, we lose all of our human uniqueness. And this is why I focus on essential skills, because what we're finding now in the workplace is that we've got a post COVID generation that were so socially isolated. Now that they're in the workplace, they're really challenged with being able to work with other people. We also have a lot of anxiety within people because they don't want to leave their homes because they're so used to working from home. We have offices that are forcing themselves back into 5 days of work a week, back into the office. We're seeing that with large corporates. But you're also seeing the other side of that where you're now starting to get 4 day work weeks. You're also starting to see people that have hybrid working models as well. So the way that people are working, the way that people behave, the way that people communicate, collaborate, have teamwork, have communication is all completely different. And they need to learn how to do that differently. We can't do the things in the same way that we've done before because it doesn't work. How do you create a fun, exciting experience in an online Zoom or a Teams meeting unless the person that's leading the meeting knows how to do that? Knows how to be
Mm,
able to engage the people that are on the session and create an experience for them that's going to allow everybody to feel like they're included and that they're a part of it. It's so different when you shut that laptop down, nobody's there in the room, right? But if you're
yeah.
in a meeting room in the office, everybody has their small talk afterwards, or they're maybe discussing the program. They're going to get a cup of tea or coffee together afterwards. They'll maybe go for lunch. So, how do you replicate that experience in a kind of online technical department? So there's a lot of work to be done. We're still, again, people are still navigating and understanding how to best do this. There's lots of tools out there that are helping people to be able to do it. I've seen lots of different things happening across big corporates and how they're trying to navigate that space as well. So I don't know what the right answer is to it, but I know what we try and do is to create interactive learning experiences, building on those essential skills while teaching them the technical skills at the same time.
I'd love if we could hone in specifically on the AI and automation modules.
Sure.
I'm not sure if your experience has been the same, but us writing the newsletter, the majority of 2023 up until maybe midway through this year has been primarily individual direct to consumer interest, people trying out different tools, ChatGPT and stuff like that. And only really within the past 6 months have we started to see a real switch in B2B adoption, implementation, and training their workforce, right? It's really been within the past 6 months that businesses have, like, the pennies eventually dropped for them and been like, oh, it's not something that we can afford to be scared about. We actually have to educate
Yeah.
ourselves on this, right? So I'm wondering, with all of those kind of factors you described of like people maybe being socially isolated after COVID and you trying to implement this level of humanity and human social interaction into your education, how exactly do you teach something that is so dependent on technology itself with something like AI and automation? How exactly do you teach that to people in a way that they can become socially gratified and actually enjoy that learning as well?
Okay, I'll give you an example. If I was to ask you this question, what is an algorithm? What would you say?
I'm like, I couldn't put it in words.
Okay, so is it instructions? Is it like a way for people to understand how to do one thing or leading into another thing? So, how I would ask that question is maybe get them to give me an answer. And then I'll go, okay, well, really, an algorithm is a set of instructions are given in a certain order based upon certain rules that are based on that. So, I'm going to say, okay, you have on your table paper, pens to write on, you have a cup that is on one side of the table and you have a paper clip on the other side of the table. And you're only allowed to use the words up, down, forward, backwards, grip, and release. And you have to try using those 6 words, writing down on your paper to get the paper clip from one side of the table into the cup. The only caveat that you can use measurement in some sort of way, but you have to tell the people how you're going to use that measurement. Now go together in a team, you have 5 minutes, go and write that out on a piece of paper. So what I've done there is I've asked them to try and understand the concept of what an algorithm is a set of instructions. They now need to try and write a set of instructions only using a certain set of parameters to get one thing to move into another thing, right? This example being a paper cup into a paper cup. And they've got to work together to do that. So you've got 4 or 5 people discussing that, how they're going to do it. They're then trying it and practicing it. So they're using teamwork, they're using collaboration, they're using communication to be able to do that. They're then using their writing skills to be able to do it. They're then problem solving to work out if that's the right thing. They're testing, they're iterating that process, and they're doing it within a time scale. They've got 5 minutes to do it. Then once they've done it, they've got to swap that algorithm with the table that's next to them. So then the cup and the paper are put back in the original places, and they've got to read the other person's instructions from the other table to see if their algorithm will work for them. And most of the time, it doesn't. And it's because we've not given it clear instructions, right rules, right ways to be able to. And what this does is help them understand that process. So rather than just asking, what's an algorithm? Okay, an algorithm is a set of instructions. They're really embodied in that full experience, and they're building on their skills and their essential skills to be able to do that. So when we take about learning in that type of way, it's building upon what we do as humans, but understanding what the technology does, and then being able to go and move that into the kind of technology experience. It gives an example of just maybe one part of a task of what we would teach in some sort of lesson that we do in AI and automation. Another thing we might do is, for example, Google Lens is a great tool for helping people to understand how using the camera can help it then work and discover where something else is online. And when Google Lens came out, it came out like 2 or 3 years ago, but people didn't know about it, right? It came out in 2019. But it's only, so we've been teaching it since then. It's only really now that it's built into Chrome, it's built into Google, it's just everywhere for people to use. So we would give people an iPad or get them to download the Google app on their device and then go around the room and search for something using that camera on their phone, and then ask them to be able to look at it and go, okay, can you translate with that? So if you're going on holiday, when would that be useful for you? So then they would look at the functions of that tool and they can see that actually there's a translate option. So when they're maybe going on holiday, they can take a picture of something or upload that picture into Google Lens and then showcase that to another person to help them be able to communicate effectively with that other person in that other language. Does that make sense as well? So there's
It
there's
does. It
ways
does.
of like helping people to understand the technology, understand the tools, but teaching them in different ways to be able to do it.
Interesting. I think what I would what it sounds like to me is you're teaching them the foundational knowledge to actually understand how this technology works and how it operates, right? You're putting
That's
these
just some examples of what we do. It's just that's just you asked for a bit of an example. That's just a couple of
yeah.
examples of some of the games that we play, but from relating to kind of what the corporates are looking for or what the kind of industry is looking for now, because the tools are built in now. Like Copilot is built in. A lot of people that are now doing their jobs are now getting asked questions by the technology that they've never seen before. So they're writing a sentence in Word or something and it's saying, do you want Copilot to finish this for you? And they're like, what the heck is Copilot? And so now these enterprises are going, okay, we need to upskill our staff in how to do this. And generally, technology has either been seen as something that needs to be taught to our staff, or it's something that no, our staff do not need to learn technology because they have technology at home. But what enterprises don't understand is that everybody has a different piece of technology, as I'm holding up my phone here, and how they interact with that piece of technology is very different than the other individual. So by giving your staff the ability to learn in the same way gives everybody a baseline to be able to work from, and how
Talk to
you
me
then.
about that baseline on a practical level, right? So if you're going within these kind of B2B organizations and enterprises, like on a practical level, are you teaching them kind of prompt engineering, how to use a specific tool, more so a holistic understanding of how it works? Like how are you teaching maybe a practical understanding of how to implement and use AI within B2Bs and enterprise organizations?
Yeah, so if so in the AI and automation course, we teach prompt engineering with ChatGPT. So we use
Got you.
ChatGPT, and so we explain this is how you prompt engineer, this is how you train the AI, because we've got to learn what a language model system is before that, and we've learned all of that to get to this point. And then we go, okay, how do we work with an AI? To then how do we train this AI? How do we engineer? How do we make the AI work for us on our behalf? And so you have to kind of go through that journey to be able to help the learner understand what that process is. Enterprise wise, it's generally specific to what that company needs are, because every company has specific tech setups that are specific to their company. Generally, big corporates are working with Microsoft 365. They are using Power BI, so they're heavily working on data. So it's not just AI, it's data and data analytics and data infrastructure. It's all of data and AI together. And we're
Mm.
currently partnering with Data Lab to deliver some training through them that we've done through for the last kind of 2 years. And our current one is practical training with AI. So we're teaching ChatGPT, we're teaching Gemini, and we're teaching Copilot as well, so that our learners that are doing this course have the competency in those three platforms that they can then use when they're in the workplace. So it's workplace learning that they're getting through these funded courses that we're able to provide. But when I'm working individually with businesses, it is bespoke to what their systems that they're using,
Got you.
because I don't think that just putting them on any general course, if you're an employee of a company, and this is what the problem that I found trying to sell our courses this year, is that they can't see how it works specifically for them, right?
Mm.
So they want bespoke as part of it. So it's almost like
Got you.
individual learners that are wanting to upskill, or small businesses, is most people that we're getting on the courses at the moment for this, because they see the need and they want to improve their lives for the better. But I
Mm.
think enterprise have got to wake up, and they've got to invest in training if they're not doing it already. Training budgets have been cut since COVID. It's the first thing that went from all businesses, all of them, absolutely all of them. They cut the training budgets. So any type of training is gone. Any in-person training has gone. So, for example, NHS, the UK, well, NHS Scotland has now stopped all in-person training. All training has to be done online now, as an
Mm.
example. So you're making it difficult for people to learn, communicate, collaborate with each other by doing that. But you're also saying that you're willing to stop training your staff because there's no budget for it, because the budget needs to be spent elsewhere. And so I hope that as we move into 2025, and that next year, or whenever you're listening to this, maybe you're in 2025, that there's money there, that there's money being made available to help you develop in your role, to help you get the most out of your technology, to help your team develop, to help you work better and collaborate and communicate, and keep up with the times. Because I think in 2 years' time, Liam, like, we won't be having the conversation about AI anymore.
Talk to
We'll
me
be.
about this is what I wanted to jump into, right? Talk to me
Mhm.
about 2025 and 2026, right? You've got a pretty unique insight in that you're in the education space, you have these six core competencies, you have an
Yep.
insight into enterprises and businesses and seeing what they are, and you're obviously very up to date with the news and the AI and automation space in general, right? You've got the finger on the
Yep.
pulse.
I
Looking
mean, your
ahead,
report does a lot of that as well, though, doesn't it, Liam?
we try. We try. So looking ahead 2025, 2026, keeping in mind the kind of rapid pace of innovation, what are you earmarking as maybe areas that you want to look into, or where should people really be looking at as a space for education in such I guess ambiguous space, right? Is like, how do we know that AI tools that we're using today aren't going to be outdated in the next 3 months, right? Because it's a
It's
possibility.
true. It is very much true. I think OpenAI have an almost daily update to their app. So I use macOS, and macOS maybe has like an every 2 day update for the operating system. And I'm sure it's the same across all the other operating systems that are out there, Gemini being the same, Microsoft platforms being the same as well. This is why fundamental knowledge is super important. So if you have the fundamental skills, then you understand how the technology can evolve. If you just learn what's happening right now, then you don't know how it got to that point. You don't
Mm,
understand why it's moved on to that next stage and how it's going to move on from there. So I recommend if any business is investing in any sort of training, or any individual listening is wanting to invest, you gain a tool that's going to get, or you attend a course, or take a course online on giving you some sort of fundamental knowledge, so that when the technology changes, you understand the process of why that's happened, or where it's going to head to next. And it's not too big of a leap, it's not too big of a jump for you to get a hold on that. We are never going to be up to date with the technology, ever. Even as a trainer in Apple, I would come into work one day and they had an update, and I'm like, shit, I've got to learn this like right now before people are going to come in and ask these questions. I mean, we could never ever keep up to date with the technology, but we need to have the fundamentals to understand how it's going to work and how it's going to impact our lives and how to make it work for us, right?
yeah. I
How
mean,
does
that's
how does it
ultimately what
impact our
matters,
life?
right? Is that
Exactly.
it's all good and well to teach you the theory of how it works, but people don't really, excuse my French, give a shit unless they can
No.
understand and they can really grasp, how is this going to affect me on a
Hmm.
personal level? Am I going to make more money? Am I going to make less money? Am I going to have more spare time? Am I going to have less time? Like, how does this actually impact me and my family, my friends, my social life, and my
Yeah.
happiness?
I mean, if I ask this question to the audience as well as yourself, Liam, it is, if you were to look at your phone, how much of your phone do you actually use? Right? I bet it's around the 20 to 30% of the capacity of what that phone can actually do for you, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're an iPhone or an Android user or a Google user, it does not matter. You probably don't use that phone to its full capacity because you use what you've learned, or one of your friends has told you that you can do this, or your family member said, oh, you can try this as well. Because you're not intentionally going and learning it unless you want it to improve your life in some sort of way. You want to take better pictures. You want to have a process of connecting your apps to what else that you've got stored elsewhere, or you want to do one thing better. You're only going to do that by going and learning how to do it, so it can enhance your experience of using that piece of technology. The same can be said about your brain, right? How much of your brain do we actually use? It's the same with the technology. How much of the technology do we actually use? You need to take that step to invest in yourself, invest in your team, invest in your company, to get the skills to develop to make it work for you, so that you can have it working. I mean, for a business owner, it's a no-brainer, absolute no-brainer to implement AI and automation tools into your day-to-day existence. It doesn't make sense to me if you're not. Why would you take all these tasks that you do
How
day
are
by
you
day,
using AI?
repetitive? How
Tell
am
me
I
about
using
that.
AI?
Yeah.
I use a lot of automation instead. And how I use AI is almost like three staff members at the moment. So having chat GPTs to be able to do the work for the writing is really, really helpful. And automations, they have to be in place in order to make sure things can work while I don't need to, or while I can't. And so those
Mm.
are the two things in order for my business to grow and develop. For me, going from a team of 10 back to a team of one or two has only been able to work because I have AI and automation in place, and because I've had this knowledge since way before it's became into the stratosphere, really. So that's the only reason I've been able to kind of be where I am right now, and to have technology coaching running as it is, because of the skills that I've got. And skill stacking is what I call it. One thing, you learn the next thing, you learn the next thing, and that way too.
I
So yeah.
mean, with these things, I usually finish the podcast by asking my guest to provide some sort of advice on how they should get into AI, how should they become up to speed. But you, as an educator, as a born educator, as a born teacher, have basically said for the last 52 minutes and 9 seconds exactly how to do that. So I don't even feel as if that's the right question to ask. I guess instead of that, just to kind of round up everything, what does the next 3, 5, 10 years look like for you? What are you picturing for your business? Where would you like to be?
Yeah, so currently for 2025 launch, we will have our community learning experience platform launched with a book to hopefully to help it go along with it. Didn't make much sense, but yes, to go along with it with the book. It's that time of day for me as well. It's probably early days for you, but it's quite late in the day on a Friday for me now. So the that will be launched in 2025. I think for me, it's about helping as many businesses as possible and
Cool.
getting themselves updated and keeping our I think what we're seeing this as a change of social media, and you might see this yourself as well, is that it's less about the business and it's more about the people. And I
Mm,
think we need to remember that we are people living in a technology world, and it's about letting the technology work for us and not the other way around. And so the more that we can have our uniqueness come across, our authentic selves come across, and how we use the technology and interact with the tools in that way, then the better that these tools can work for us. And if you're looking to evolve into careers that are going to be future focused and future facing, then look into data careers, look into AI careers, look into cybersecurity careers, and they are going to help because we're moving into a no code building world. So you want to look at gaining skills in other ways and stacking your skills in multiple ways so that you can become that person that is invaluable to any company because of the unique skills that you have as a human.
I love it. I love it. If people want to hear more from you, they want to learn what you're doing, they want to get in touch, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can go to technologycoachingonline.com and you can connect with me there or on social media via technology coaching. Also on the website, we've got an ultimate AI tools list, which is over 800 AI tools that they can access that are split into different categories that will enable them to be able to see what AI tools are out there that they can go and have a play with and start to interact with the technology to see how it's going to work better for them too.
I love it. I love it. Suze, thank you so much for
It's been
coming
a
on. I appreciate
pleasure.
your time.
And I can talk about this all day long. So